Now, it's been 150 days that they are being starved and executed and tortured and raped and enslaved in the Hamas terror dungeons.
You don't even know how many of them are still alive.
No. We know that of the 134 hostages abducted, including 4 from before the 10/7 massacre, at least 33 have either been executed in captivity or were murdered at the time of their abduction, and Hamas is still holding onto their bodies for a ransom. But no, we do not have a list from Hamas about who they are holding, who is alive, who is dead, and so we have to fight and continue putting military pressure on Hamas, assuming that over 100 of them are alive, so we can bring them back to their families.
This UN report this afternoon also said it uncovered sexual violence against Palestinians by members of the IDF and right-wing settlers.
To the extent that there is credible, concrete information that can be presented to Israeli authorities, we can investigate that. Unfortunately, one of the problems we find often from the UN, and we saw this in a report a few weeks ago, is making unsubstantiated, vague allegations without names, without dates, without places, nothing specifically reported to Israel. But of course, those are not standards that we engage in. If there is information, we will investigate. But what the UN said is clear and convincing is the evidence that hostages are being sexually abused in the Hamas terror dungeons right now.
Today, the vice president met with Benny Gantz, who was not only in the war cabinet, but is a political rival to Benjamin Netanyahu. And it comes as she's calling for a ceasefire in Gaza immediately, which is further than President Biden has gone. This is all happening. She calls, by the way, what's happening in Gaza a, quote, humanitarian catastrophe. A new Wall Street Journal poll also shows that Israel is losing support among the American people, that the most people so far, right now, you're seeing that poll up right now say that Israel has gone too far. And around the world, the numbers are often worse. Are you concerned that you are losing support, not only from the world, but from your greatest ally, the United States? We're
concerned that there are 134 hostages still being abused in the Hamas terror dungeons, and that Hamas is still fighting and threatening to perpetrate the 10/7 attacks again and again. And so we're going to do everything we can in order to bring back the hostages, bring Hamas to justice, and fight to do that with the support of our allies that need to understand that we are doing exactly what they would do if such horrific atrocities were perpetrated against them. Of course, we want to do this with support from our allies. It's important. It's why I'm here on TV making the case to the American people. But what we are worried about is the prospect of leaving Hamas on its feet after 10/7. That will not happen. This war will end with the dismantling of Hamas and release of the hostages. That's the only possible response to the atrocities of 10/7.
And I just want to get your reaction. Is there any new information? That terrible video that showed the desperate, very hungry, obviously starving Palestinians swarming the aid convoy, the trucks filled with food in the middle of the night at 4 o'clock in the morning last Thursday. Many of the people who were killed, Hamas says more than 100 were killed, hundreds more injured. Many of them suffered gunshot wounds. Why did the IDF begin firing weapons at that point?
This is a desperately sad situation, the tragedy that Hamas has brought on the Palestinian people in Gaza by launching this needless war on 10/7 and fighting this war from inside densely populated area. The large majority of people who were killed in that desperate incident were killed because there was a stampede to take over the aid trucks, and some of them were run over. Now, there was an incident in which a number of individuals began running towards our soldiers, and they fired warning shots in self-defense. One of the problems that our troops have had in Gaza.
But why self-defense? They're just starving people trying to get food.
Well, one of the problems that our troops have had in Gaza is of Hamas in civilian dress. That is its MO, to make it very difficult for Israel to operate. In civilian dress, running towards Israeli vehicles, placing bombs on them, or in fact carrying guns. And if a mob runs towards soldiers, then they may fire warning shots in order to defend themselves from an immediate threat to their lives. And there was an immediate threat to the troops. But the large majority of people killed in that desperate incident were killed because of the stampede on the aid trucks. And I should mention, this was the 4th convoy this week that Israel was organizing, not through the United Nations, because we want aid to reach people who need it in a way that makes sure Hamas can't steal it. So we're working with local actors in Gaza to make sure aid can reach the north instead of having to go through UNRWA, which has been covering up for Hamas stealing aid.
I think we can all agree not enough food is getting in.
Well, there is excess capacity at Israel's crossings. Yesterday, we had a record number of trucks entering into Gaza, 277 trucks, more than any single day in this conflict. And there is excess capacity. If nations want to send more food, they can send it. We will facilitate its entry into Gaza.
You do, right. But, I mean, everybody agrees. There are people starving in Gaza. They can't get out of Gaza. And the warnings are that they're teetering on the brink of famine. I mean, there is not enough food getting into Gaza.
There are 20 operational bakeries in Gaza producing 2.5 million loaves of bread and pita bread. We've had 250,000 tons of humanitarian aid enter since the beginning of the war. The problem isn't how much is getting in. The problem is that the UN is struggling to distribute the aid at the pace that Israel is facilitating it, and that's because the UN has been relying on UNRWA, the so-called refugee agency that unfortunately is completely riddled with terrorists and in cahoots with Hamas.
Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.